friends, we will start today's webinar. I welcome all our friends. I am Hemant Agarwal, host and coordinator for today's webinar conducted by CHS Help Forum. This website is specifically relating to various issues that can be experienced in cooperative housing societies and will benefit both the managing committee as well as the housing society members. It has very simple language articles, ड्राफ्ट ऑफ एप्लीकेशंस, वेबिनार वीडियोस, जैसे आज का वीडियो है वो भी हम इसी वेबसाइट में अपलोड करके रखा हुआ है हमने, आप उसको भी विजिट कर सकते हैं। और जैसे जैसे समय मिलेगा वी विल बी एडिंग more content to the website. Please do visit and support our website. This Lift Law Reform Committee is formed specifically for the purpose of bringing in necessary legal reforms by filing a writ petition or PIL in High Court under the guidance of our committee president, Mr. Mohd Afzal. Everybody is invited to provide their experiences, expert opinion, technical guidances, which will form base for filing this writ petition or PIL in High Court. All friends are requested to listen carefully without interrupting any of the speakers. Only one person shall speak with the permission of webinar coordinator to maintain decorum and discipline and to obtain some fruitful results. We have already conducted 3 webinars on this lift reforms issue. The topics were 1. Policy making for lift law reforms. Second topic was safety features requirements for lift law reforms. And the third topic was lift users accident insurance and compensation. The YouTube videos of these 3 webinars are uploaded on our website for all to visit and watch. In these 3 webinars, we have collected good number of inputs and views given by our friends who attend our webinars. Our today's guest speaker is an industry expert, Mr. Tuck Matthew. Mr. Matthew is going to speak on topic of ensuring safety and avoiding lift accidents. And for everyone's benefit, he shall also be presenting with a PowerPoint presentation for benefit of everybody. I now invite our Lift Laws Reform Committee President, Mr. Mohammad Afzal, to introduce and welcome our today's guest speaker and industry expert, Mr. Tuck Matthew. Mr. Mohammad Afzal, over to you. Thank you, sir.
Uh, Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. I have known Mr. Tuck Matthew for the last 12 years since my first PIL, which I had filed in 2010. Without wasting time, I would like to give a brief introduction of Mr. Matthews. Mr. Matthew has done his engineering from the University of Dar es Salaam. He has done MBA from the Birla Institute of Technology. He has over 3 decades of experience in the construction and vertical transportation industry. He is a chartered engineer. He is a chartered engineer and a fellow uh,
a fellow of the Indian Institute of Engineers. I think we have lost you there.
yeah,
Is it a
no,
network problem, or we should just
yeah,
should I just go on?
just a moment. He is a qualified elevator consultant certified by the International Association of Elevator Consultant, IAEC. He is a representative on the P4 panel of the ET25 committee constituted by the Bureau of Indian Standard, that is BIS, for rewriting the elevator and escalator codes. He is a member of various associations like the International Association of Elevator Consultant. Mr. Tuck Matthew is the principal consultant at Tuck Consulting. Matthew is the convener of the panel for writing codes of lift and elevators CED 46 P16 of the National Building Code. He is a member of various associations like the International Association of Elevator Consultant, International Association of Elevator Engineers, Council for Tail Building and Urban Habitat, CTBUH, and Consulting Engineer Association of India, that is CEAI. I would request Mr. Matthew to take things forward from here. Over to Apna, Mr. Matthew.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks a lot for this opportunity to address an issue which is pretty critical and pretty important. I think the first thing I will do is I'll turn off my video so that we can focus on the slides.
Go ahead,
Okay,
sir.
so lift safety is something that I have been talking about for many years now, and pointing out many issues. In fact, there are many people whom I have talked to on this subject, many forums on which I have talked on this subject. But I will still try to like to go through it because every day we do have issues and they need to be addressed. So first clarification, lift elevators, I mean, they are the same thing, and I will keep referring to as elevators because that's sort of becoming slowly the international norm. Europe and Asia and India, definitely we use lifts. The Americans use elevator, and that's how it is. And when I say E and E, it is elevator and escalator, just a sort of an acronym. This is just for the benefit of the audience. And when we say vertical transportation, this is again an elevator industry terminology. We are talking about elevators, escalators, and moving walks. Of course, moving walks are horizontal, but we talk about it as vertical transportation. So, over the last 2 years, we have had the pandemic, and there have been lots of issues, lots of things that have happened. We have, clap for the doctors, services. I mean, the policemen, the firemen, everything. But there's one group of people who have been ignored. And I say this with a lot of anguish because the industry, elevator industry, the mechanics have really struggled through this pandemic. During the early days, they were not referred to as essential services. And I know mechanics who have been thrashed. I know mechanics who had to walk miles together because they were not allowed to use their vehicles and then to attend to our needs, to ensure that hospitals function, to ensure that our daily living is not impacted. Despite which, there has been little appreciation for what they have done. And, unlike the doctors who go to one facility or, delivery boys who come to the gate and disappear, the elevator mechanics have had to enter different buildings. And the elevator industry over the last 1 year, just in India, have lost about 40 to 50 people. This is just the employees. Now, these people have been out in the field and then they go back home with the infection, and their family members have also had to struggle. So this is, I think, something that we all need to sort of acknowledge and remember that many of our lives, when we are in a multi-story building, is dependent upon that elevator mechanic. And my request is the next time you see an elevator mechanic, don't just turn your face away. Sort of acknowledge what he does for your life. Okay, the elevators, the routes is. This is a picture that many industry people would know, but I would like to introduce to the audience who necessarily are not from the industry. What you see is a pictogram of Elisha Greaves Otis when he invented the safety elevator, which is around 1853. Some people say it's 1853, 84, and then he demonstrated it. What he does is he cuts the rope, and the elevator doesn't fall, and then he says, "All safe, gentlemen." So the slogan is "All safe, gentlemen." However, when we look at this solemn promise from 168 years ago, this is 1850, 168 years ago, and when we look at the reality today, this is where we are. We have failed in that promise. I mean, 2018, 12 reported fatalities, 2021 was 38, and 2022, when I first made this presentation, it was 3. When I was working on the draft, it was 3, and today I had to update it to 5. Tragically, these numbers do not shock us anymore. And many of these slides I have used in many presentations, and there's very little bit of an update. It's just like I just use the same slides. But this is one slide that every time I have to update, and it is with a lot of anguish that I update this particular slide. And mind you, let me just keep in mind that these are just reported fatalities, which we find in newspapers or maybe something on Google. Now, unreported fatalities, it's anybody's guess. So, unreported fatalities, I mean, what happens is the grapevine, you do get information. I mean, there's a picture which was floating around in the net. It's not mentioned anywhere. There's an incident which happened. Mechanic got killed on the car top. In fact, I know the name of the mechanic. The doors were shorted. It's not anywhere in the news. Then there is another one which happened where it's very close to Mumbai city, where there's an elevator crash and possibly one person died. It was not reported. So it is anybody's guess as to how many of these more we would have to add to the figures that I just showed. So now let's look at why do we have these. Sorry, before I get into that, about 2020, there was a conference. There was a discussion which took place about elevators and safety, and the comment that was made is that we are going overboard discussing accidents. And I believe that the organizers and the speaker was generally referring to me when this comment was made, and it was published in one of the journals. And I must say that we are not going overboard in any way, because any life lost in an elevator which has been launched declaring all safe cannot have a single fatality. Forget about an accident. We cannot have an accident, let alone fatality. And we have a tendency of, wiping away, washing away, pushing everything around, calling it freak. And trust me, there is nothing like freak in an elevator accident. The way elevators have been designed, the way the standards for elevators have been set, there is nothing that can be freak in an elevator accident, let alone death. And as we go along, I'll show you some examples of why I'm saying this. Okay, now a little bit of statistics. This is Henrich's triangle. Those of you who know about safety, I mean, this is a triangle which was established many, many years ago, which says that before one fatality, there are at least 30,000 unsafe acts and unsafe conditions. So, when you see a fatal accident that has happened on an elevator, what we need to remember is that it is not freak. It is not something which is an isolated event. It has been gradually, we have built it up through multiple unsafe acts and unsafe conditions. And I mean, I will also just demonstrate what I mean by this. And just to give you an idea of what it means, is 2018 to date, with 106 fatalities, we are talking about 31 lakhs 80,000 unsafe acts and unsafe conditions. Today, as we speak, there are unsafe conditions and unsafe acts that are happening. And, hiding our head in sand is not going to take this issue away. I mean, it's just going to keep increasing. And before long, these statistics are just not going to be something which we don't care about. And, I always ask people in the industry, I ask everything, if this incident was somebody related to you or somebody close to you or your family member or your friend, would you be willing to just sit back and say that, okay, fine, we went overboard, or try to push it under the carpet? So why do these fatalities happen? And I call it apathy. And apathy is across the board. It is not just the elevator industry. It is across the board, from the first design time to the procurement to the skilling. At every stage, there's absolute apathy. Again, I will point out how we as users, how we as designers, how we as developers, architects, we have an apathy towards elevators. And all these little bit of things add to the unsafe acts and unsafe conditions. Now, I will take you through each of these things and give you examples of what's happening. So when we talk about the design compromise, we need to remember that a multi-story building was possible only because of an elevator. Despite which, even today, I mean, I, as a consultant, we sit through design meetings, and I say this openly, that even toilets find, this is a slide which I use at many workshops, many seminars, many conferences, where even the toilets find higher priority. Again, I will, as we go along, I will demonstrate with pictures as to why I say this. So let's talk about the design stage. I mean, those of you who are in Mumbai and know Nariman Point and Cuff Parade, you know the long waiting times. This is a building where we had done a reviews after the building was complete, and it is 371 seconds is your average waiting time. Now, average waiting time as per the National Building Code, it is not as if we got a National Building Code which is specific to India. National Building Code says that it should be less than 25 seconds. Now, the consequences of it, which an architect or a developer, or for that matter, even a user doesn't think about, is that there are consequences. The elevators are overloaded, they are overused, way beyond the design starts and stops. The component lives are reduced, and there is reduced maintenance. Now, reduced maintenance, it's not on account of the maintenance mechanic not trying to maintain it, not all the time. Sometimes they also do compromise. It is because we do not give shutdown for maintenance. I was at a building a couple of years back, and the owner was very upset because there were lots of breakdowns. I went and saw the machine room, and I got really upset. I called the managing director of that company, and I called the mechanic, and I always wanted to give him a slap because the elevator is in such a horrible shape. When I talked to the mechanic, he said, I do not ever get a shutdown for maintenance. The only time I get access to the elevators is to, to get a shutdown elevator started. And I'm expected to start it up immediately, which I started up, and that's it. I don't manage to get to maintain the elevators. And what do you expect the maintenance mechanic to do? Obviously, as time goes on, there is going to be accidents. Now, establishing the number of elevators and escalators, it is not just that, you just put something into the thing or the architect puts into it. There is a very clear science, and the science is not over the last couple of years. It's been in existence for decades. It's been in existence from 1960 and before that. These are some of the books. The National Building Code of India is available. There is International Building Code. There are books. There are people who have devoted lives, their lives for the science of elevatoring. And when I say elevatoring, I mean establishing the number of lifts, capacity, and speed. Now, despite this science, and when we look at the fact that it's even mentioned in the National Building Code, how do we operate, or what is the situation? Building approvals, no objection certificate, occupation certificate, high-rise committee, none of them require any study, any submission on the elevator adequacy. In fact, the high-rise committee, I've actually commented on this. They said a high-rise cannot exist. Okay, structure is important. A high-rise building cannot exist without the elevators. However, it is not a reference. And invariably, the only reference is to the fireman's lift. Now, in this kind of a situation, there is no onus on the developer or the architect or even the people who own the buildings to look at what the number of elevators that are required, whether they are adequate or they are inadequate. Now, even in terms of design compromise, the National Building Code says that the fireman's lift has to have a protected lobby. And the picture that you see on the right is from the Tarangan sieges in 2009, where 6 firemen died. We were called in to investigate this thing, and when we looked at it and went through the entire thing, from an elevator perspective, they were as per the code, because at that point of time, there was no code. There was no standard. We corrected that, obviously, and 2011 we had a new thing which was established. But since then, we have had so many other fatalities. And as we talk, there are buildings that have been constructed without a protected lobby for the firemen lift. So what are we doing? We are actually creating problems and then saying that, okay, there are fatalities. But the root problem, that is at the design stage itself, we are building a building which will ensure that we have a problem. Now, even in terms of procurement, I just put across this slide I think last month. If you look at it, the US dollar rate has gone up because there are a lot of components that get imported. The freight rates have gone up. Steel prices have gone up. Fuel prices, all of us know it. But then when we look at the elevator price, they have been systematically going down. And I asked this question, I said, what is the magic? It is not as if elevator companies are charity institutions. They are all out there to make profit. And if we keep squeezing them for lower and lower prices, somewhere along the line, something has to give. I'm not saying it is ethical. I'm not justifying it. But we need to recognize that if somebody is giving something cheaper, it's obviously got a reason. And I keep this picture. This is something which I've been putting across for 10 to 12 years. And at this moment, I think it is the most relevant. Yes, we can get somebody to do something cheaper. However, it is not an apple-to-apple comparison. And we as consumers, despite not knowing enough about elevators, we are the most comfortable dealing with the cheapest option. We are most comfortable, going and bargaining and saying, if there is somebody who is selling it at 100 rupees, we are more than willing to accept something which is at 10 rupees without asking the question of what are we getting at that 10 rupees, without asking the question, how is the person doing it at 10 rupees? And we have gone into this thing about cheapest when it comes into elevators. Now, the same thing when it comes into a toilet fitting or a bathroom fitting. We will go for the most modern, we will go for the most, I won't say necessarily the expensive, we will go for the most up-to-date technology when it comes into toilet fittings. But the same doesn't apply to elevators. And what is the consequences of this? I've just taken some machine pictures. You can see, you don't need to be an elevator person to recognize that these are machines which are toppled. These are machines which are broken from its bed frame. You can see a sheave that is broken. Now, is it justifiable? However, if we keep pushing on the prices, somewhere along the line, things will start giving. We need to remember that if steel costs are going up, there is no way on earth that a component made of steel can turn out to be cheaper. The next point is the low entry barriers. Today, we have got into a situation where anybody can become an elevator person. I remember when I joined the elevator industry about 32 and a half years back, 1 week in the office, and then I was sent onto the field. And the instruction to me is that when we think that you're ready, we'll call you back. And this is after my management qualification. Today, people are not willing to get grease between their fingernails. And many of the people who are out there who are coming to service you do not have that kind of the experience that is required. I interact with a lot of people across the industry, and not just forget the industry, even architects and developers. And it's sad that many of them do not even know the requirements of the National Building Code. There are times when I have given architects copies of the National Building Code. That is how bad it is. And one of the justification explanations across the board is that, technology has improved so much. But I say that technology has not improved that much that we can ignore the training requirements, the experience that an elevator person requires. Technology-wise, probably aircrafts have progressed the most, despite which they still go through a rigorous maintenance program. So what are the consequences? Safety is a big issue in maintenance. Now, if you are not bothered about your own safety when you're installing an elevator, you can see there's a hammer, you can see a drill machine to it, and there's a safety waiting to happen. You don't even wear your basic footwear, which is required. The picture on the right, I don't think you need to recognize what is happening. He's standing on a bracket trying to fix a machine. There's no car, anything before. If he loses his footing, he's going to crash down to the bottom of that elevator hoistway, or maybe at the top of the car, and it's a dead person here. And he, as a person, doesn't recognize what is happening, what he's doing. And this is all because of the fact that he's probably not had enough training. He's not probably had practical training. Maybe he's just sat in a classroom and studied. His intentions are good. He wants to fix the elevator. He wants to ensure that he has serviced, but he's coming without the adequate training. Now, even in terms of elevator entrepreneurs, we have anybody becoming an elevator person. There are salespeople who have become elevator companies with no field experience, which means that they have no technical experience. I know of a driver from an elevator company who became a elevator company. He now owns an elevator company. There are transporters of elevator material who is also now selling, installing elevators, maintaining elevators. What do you expect from these kind of people? And right now, if you look at it, the pictures that you see on the right, there's an elevator store on the top right. It's like a typical Kirana shop. And from there, you can buy a full elevator. You come down, there's a company which maintains microwaves and everything, and he also maintains elevators. You can get elevator components on Amazon. You get you buy one, you get another one free. We have actually commoditized elevators to an extent without recognizing the criticality of it, that elevators, if not taken care of, can kill. So one of the issues that requires to be addressed is we need to ensure that the elevator contractors, and when I say elevator contractors, I know this group is significantly Maharashtra focused. We need to recognize that if elevator contract licenses, the entry barriers are not raised, somebody who is operating in Gujarat, it's not going to take him too much time to start operating in Maharashtra. And this needs to be addressed on an all India basis. It's not enough that we look at our closed days, okay, we are safe. It doesn't work that way, because tomorrow you might be traveling from Maharashtra to Gujarat. From Gujarat, you may be traveling to Madhya Pradesh. You might travel to Andhra Pradesh, where there's no licensing at all. What do you do? So it's not enough that we actually look at just what is happening in our neighborhood, but we need to look at it in a global situation. And one of the most urgent requirements is we need to recognize that elevators and escalators are high tech and require a high level of knowledge, skill, and experience, which means the people who are involved in the elevator business, the hands on people, required to have certified technical knowledge, verifiable technical knowledge. You can't pick somebody from the street and make him an elevator person and then say that we expect safety, we expect quality, we expect everything to be in place. Now, the reason why this is again happening is I go back to the cheapest, where elevator companies today are being forced to ensure, forced in a situation where they cannot invest in training because they need to get more productivity. You pay salary, they expect more productivity from the person. And productivity doesn't happen in a classroom. Productivity doesn't happen during training. And more elevator companies are being forced into doing this. And when I say this, it's not just small companies. Across the board, this is happening. So one of the urgent requirements, which I would say, is that we need to make it mandatory that anybody who is involved in technical work in the elevator industry, installing, maintaining elevators, requires to have verifiable, certified knowledge, skill, and experience. We come into statutory oversight. Yes, Maharashtra does have a lift license, and we are the oldest lift act that has happened. 1939, Maharashtra, the Bombay Lift Act at that point of time is one of the oldest anywhere in the world. I think we are one of the top 10 oldest legislations. Even the 1939 one, which is now we have a different version, which is still to be ratified in the assembly. It is still a very strong, even from 1939. Many of the issues that we have today, if we just follow that legislation, the act from 1939, the rules from 1956, we still have a strong system in place. However, even that is not followed. Now, many states like Andhra Pradesh, they do not have a legislation. You can virtually get away with murder there. Now, even where the states have a legislation, I mean, that's what you have been fighting on. It is fairly ineffective in terms of the inspection that happens, the quality of the inspection that happens, the knowledge of the person who comes to inspection. They're all little iffy. There's a little bit of a question mark there. And the other issue that also comes in is that there are many states which come up with requirements which are contradiction to the IS provisions, or at times are not even practical. And this not only comes from the elevator legislative body, it doesn't come from the lift inspectors alone, it also comes from the CFO, it also comes from other agencies. Now, this is a serious issue because I do not know, I mean, the lawyers on this panel would understand it better. My understanding is that there are 10 rules laid out and you make one, if you contradict one or you give a thing to one, almost all the 10 become don't become necessary. I mean, I do not know what exactly, you would know it better. In any case, we need to recognize that when somebody comes for an inspection, it is just for a momentary time. He gets a snapshot in that 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It is almost impossible for him to estimate what happened before that. Is it that the job was suddenly made ready for his inspection? And he has no way of predicting what the future holds. I know of an accident where somebody got killed, I think probably a day after an inspection took place. And when we got into it, we figured out that right after the inspection took place, the mechanic had to shorten the door because there was a problem. So we need to bear in mind that inspections are only part of the solution. It's only a snapshot in time. And I keep repeating this, not just in India, across the world, that we have a problem in depending too much on inspections. Inspections can only resolve to some extent. I mean, I give this example of a police. Just because you're a policeman doesn't mean that crime goes away. They are there to sort of legislate, they sort of try to control, but the basic things have to be in place. Then it's a question that I keep asking. Why is it that lifts in India differ from location to location? There has been an attempt by the Bureau of Indian Standards and the ET25 committee to go around and try to sort of make people to come under the same platform. It's a very slow process because it still remains a state legislation. And one of the things that some of the associations are trying to do is One Nation, One Act. The elevator division from IEMA, that's Indian Electrical and Electronic Manufacturers Association, they are trying to push for this. IGMAI, I mean, the logo you can see on the extreme left, IGMAI, they are also trying to push for it. There are a couple of other associations also who are trying to push for it. But I think the challenge which we need to put across in front of us is to attack and handle the problem at its root. Ensure that as a nation, we have one elevator and escalator act and rule. It is not something that every state starts building it up. It's every inspector starts doing his own little bit. And this is where we can nip many of our problems at its root. Now, we have Indian standards and codes. When these accidents happen, I keep asking the thing, so what is it that needed to be changed to get these accidents down? And invariably, the old standard, that is IS 14665, there is very little, or in fact, for that matter, nothing that needs to be changed to have prevented that accident. Now, I start with the simplest of the deviations or the violations that happen. IS 14665 refers to each person as being of 68 kilos. The capacity plates invariably are based on the country of origin. And I also do find elevators where there are no capacity plates. As we go along, I'll talk of an incident where a capacity plate could probably have made a difference. Standards also say that stop switches should not be provided. But then if you look on the right, you can see stop switches having been provided. In some cases, it is that the elevator company doesn't bother. In many cases, it is because the lift inspector asks for it. The minimum rope diameter as specified by IS is 8 mm, but I'm aware of jobs and machines which are of 6 mm ropes. In fact, I even know of a car lift, which is a huge lift, which is with 6 mm ropes. Now, there is a technical thing which says that if you have an 8 mm rope and you need to have a minimum sheave diameter, which should be 320 mm, there are sheaves that are being supplied which are 160 mm. I mean, these are like blatant violations of a standard and a code that has been laid out. Men's lift capacity is supposed to be minimum 8 passenger. There are jobs again where it is not there. If you can see the lower lift here, it's a 6-person elevator. And right above it, you can see the fire lift. Again, a blatant violation. The minimum door width is 700 mm. And I know of jobs where we even have 500 mm doors. In fact, there's a new standard that is being brought out, and we still stick to this. And there was a representation from a couple of associations saying, no, you please don't put it as 700 mm, please give it as 600 mm. I mean, it's just like, you're trying to legalize something which is incorrect. Now, landing doors for elevators for buildings above 15 meters is supposed to be 1 hour fire rated. You look at the doors, many of them are not fire rated. Vision panels on automatic doors, if you see this thing, it's a vision panel over here on the extreme right top. It says vision panel shall not be supplied. However, again, I know states, I know clients, I know consumers who insist on vision panels saying, we will feel more comfortable, without recognizing that the moment you put in a vision panel, you are compromising on its fire resistance. I'll explain that a little bit more in detail. So, this is an elevator. This is the one on the left is an elevator that has been installed in an airport somewhere in this country. And if you look at it, there's no pit. Now, if you look at IS, it very clearly states what the pit, that every elevator is supposed to have a pit. Now, this is a blatant violation. Now, if you look at the elevator on the right, I mean, very proudly they announced it. They were putting it on the YouTube. And if you look at it, there's no car door. Again, a blatant violation, and which the architect, the developer, the supplier, and even the consumer is complicit. Collapsible gates, again, a big issue from 2000. Perforated collapsible gates have been banned. The landing doors and the car doors shall not be perforated because we have been losing. There are many children who have got their hands cut. There are many people who have got hurt on account of these collapsible gates. And you can see both these elevators are fairly brand new elevators with collapsible gates. And the argument that people say, in a collapsible gate, we feel more comfortable because it is, there's a lot of air that comes in. If you get stuck, it is comfortable. It is good. But that's no excuse for providing something which is against the standard, against the code. And the reason why the standard and the code has been changed to ensure that these doors are not perforated is to ensure that there is safety. But we are blatantly violating it. Again, on the vision panel, now this is a CF4 document that you say that the lift car doors shall be 2-hour fire resistant, and lift car doors are technically not possible to make it fire resistant. So when you have a document like this and you ignore this part of the code, I mean, you can more or less virtually ignore the rest of it. And then the CFO is asking for a glass vision panel when the standard very clearly say that vision panel shall not be provided on power operated doors. Now, they are asking for a glass vision panel and it's asking for fire resistance. Both together do not go together. They do not match. Now you're virtually forcing somebody to violate the law, violate the code, violate the standards. And this is a presentation which was made by people who are experienced in doors. They make only elevator doors, and they have made it very clear that your glass door is not fire rated. And if you need to have a glass door which is fire rated, you need to have it a large, full-fledged glass door, and the cost is about 5 times more. So if you are planning to do with glass and people want to watch it, you need to be prepared to spend that extra money. You cannot have a vision panel and then expect that everything is going to be fine. Again, a CFO NOC document where it's clear violation of what the code says. It says this is something from Maharashtra. It says the lifts shall open provided on every mid landing. On the other hand, the part 4 of NBC 2016, which is fire and life safety, it says lifts shall not open in the staircase. So here it is. We are forcing developers, we are forcing architects to go against the code. And again, legally, you would know, my understanding is that if there is a code which you're supposed to follow, and you are asked to contradict one, or you're supposed to go against one part of it, I believe the entire code becomes invalid. Talking about codes, I mean, some of the consequences. This is an accident which had taken place in Mumbai. And this girl was playing with her. She dashed into the lift door. The lift collapsed, and she fell into it, and she died. Now, if you look at what the standards say, that it says that the landing door shall resist a load of 345 newtons at any point without permanent deformation. I doubt that this girl would have been 34 kilos in weight, which means it was again a clear violation, and we had a girl who died for no fault of hers. And of course, we all turned around and she should not have played in the corridor. She should not dash into the lift door. But this is the reason why we have a standard. This is the reason why we have minimum strength requirement that is put in. This video, I am sure that all of you have seen it, and this boy died. But then I will pause it at one point, because many of them, after I show this video, say that we don't want to see it. It is very gruesome. It's sort of, it's very upsetting. I'll just show you one point before it. Okay. Sorry. Okay, at this point, if you can see that the boy is stuck between the swing door and the collapsible gate. And it's not as if he's crushed, he's stuck between. So if you look at the Bombay lift rules of 1958, it says the distance between such door and lift car door shall not exceed 7.5 centimeters. It doesn't take any genius to figure out that the gap here is significantly more. IS 14665 says that it should not exceed 13 centimeters. Even in 13 centimeters, if that was the gap, this boy would have still been alive. I inquired a little bit more about this thing as to what happened, and I figured out that this was an elevator that was supplied by one elevator company, and then somebody else took up the maintenance. And because he didn't have the specific spare part for it, he did a jugaad. And that jugaad ensured that the gap increased without recognizing what would happen after that. But the consequences is that we have a dead child. This is an accident which took place in a building. I think this is somewhere near Chembur. It says 5 injured as overcrowded lift crashes in SRA scheme building. And there's another news which says that there were 16 people, including for an 8-passenger lift. 2-3 boys were in the lift, and blah, 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 blah. The instructions about the capacity plate were written on the board, could not be seen because the youngster was standing against it. Now, what do you say about an elevator which doesn't even have a capacity plate? One violation. So they're saying that the capacity plate could not be seen. But even if it could have been, if the boy was not there and there was no capacity plate, we already would have had a problem. Then it says that the lift had a capacity of 8 passengers. However, there were 16 people. As per the standards, every passenger lift shall be provided with an overload device which will prevent the lift from starting in case the lift car is loaded to 110% of the rated load. Now, 8 people to 16 people is definitely, even if it is children, it definitely is more than 10%, which means obviously this lift did not have an overload weighing device. Then it says the lift is only for 8 people. It has a huge space and many people entered it. The maximum and minimum car area is defined in IS. So there's no question of having a huge space if somebody had followed the standards. Again, a clear violation, and the consequences are there for anybody to see. This is a thing which was somebody who got killed on 2019 December 31st. This is a multi-millionaire. This has happened in Indore, if I am not mistaken, the exact location. He could have easily have afforded. So there's a thought process that happens. Oh, this happens only to the poor, the SRA buildings. Sorry, it is not. Even the rich go and violate. People who can afford it, they go and violate the standards and the codes, and they get in something which is cheap, and the consequences are there for anybody to see. Now, when it comes to execution, I'll just go through this. So this is on the top left, you can see this is elevator material that has been put across, and you can see it's already in water. These are elevators that have to survive for the next 25 years, and the material that is coming is already submerged in water. The picture here is somebody went and did the plastering, and they ensured that the ropes were plastered into the floor. The finishing of the hoistway, I mean, again, something which you're just saving some few bucks. And here at the bottom left is water in the pits. The rails have already been installed. These rails can actually survive the building. If the building, you demolish the building, the rails can still survive. But it's already rusted on account of our apathy. Coming to service, the buttons have been damaged. And what do? You find a jugaad for it. You find a jugaad for the fact that the reason why you have an ELCB and NCB is to ensure that it trips if there's a power related problem. But you're ensuring that it doesn't trip by, sort of jimmying it up and ensure that it doesn't. You look at the ropes. I mean, all of you are scared of the ropes. I mean, this is pictures from two buildings. I mean, this, okay, maybe you'll not recognize it, but if you look at the muck on this rope, this is on a comprehensive maintenance contract, and this is how the ropes are. And the bottom right is a mechanic who definitely didn't know what he was doing, and he got himself killed. Okay, so now talking about maintenance and repair, you can see that this is obviously something that is not supposed to be happening, and somebody has just ignored it, and nobody's bothered about it. This is an elevator which is running with the doors open. Again, a potential accident. And we do see accidents happening around the country on account of the elevator moving with the door open. Now, when it comes to usage, the question that always I ask is, who owns the elevator? Who is responsible for the elevator? And that is like a very wishy-washy answer that comes up. It's almost like as if we don't know that an elevator exists, or that an elevator is a problem till it breaks down. The only time we actually turn around and look at the elevator to see what is happening is when it breaks down, when we have the inconvenience of walking up the stairs. None of us take responsibility for the elevator, the usage, how it is going on. And I keep saying that the person who's responsible for the elevator, the person who owns the elevator, is you as the user. If you are a building owner, and I see various things saying it's the management committee, that it's the rest of the people, it is not. It's every person is responsible for that elevator. Unless, of course, you do not need to use the elevator, you're always going to use the the stairs. So now in usage, let's see how it happens. These are some pictures of what we do to elevators. These are brand new elevators, and you can see on the left, I mean, people will think that's a developer. Actually, this is all material from somebody who's doing the renovation of his apartment. What do you expect from the elevator after this? These are electronic equipment. Would you do this to your car? Would you do this to any of your television or your phones? Would you put it in the same? And the impact of it is, you can see here on the car top, there are microprocessors, there are operators on top of the car which are dependent upon, I mean, which will ensure your safety. But this is how we take care of the elevator. Water. I mean, it's like as if, I mean, and I've had people who come and say, no, your equipment needs to be waterproof. I mean, would you say your elevator, your telephone needs to be waterproof and throw it in water? You wouldn't. You would take care of it. And this is a situation where instead of ensuring that the roof is waterproof, you put tarpaulins. This is a pit which is full of water. This is electronics where there's water on top of it. This is a water where there's water again that has gone on top. And I mean, I love to see this, where there is water falling on the machine, and the elevator company is pleading with everybody, as please take care of it, please ensure that water doesn't go on. Brand new elevators, and we don't care about it. Again, the bottom, again, you can see what the state of the equipment is. Yeah. And this is something, again, we have as a problem in India. Pan. Where do you spit the pan? You spit the pan into the elevator. Uh, Two things happen here. One is, after you have spat the pan, you cannot expect a qualified mechanic to come and pay attention to your elevators the way he should. His job is not to clean the pan. His job is not to clean the spit that we deposit on the equipment. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it we need to recognize is pan is corrosive. Pan will eat into stainless steel, pan will eat into metal, and if it any chance falls onto a rope, it will eat into the insulation, and we have a potential problem. Unfortunately, uh, except for probably five-star hotels, this is something that we see right behind the elevator landing door, and nobody bothers. I mean, it's even gone to a situation where they've spat on your landing button, the buttons which you have to touch, they spat on it. You can see. I mean, this is actually my office building where you see this here. They spat on the car operating panel. This is the picture that you have at the middle bottom. This is your light sensor, the door sensor. They spat on it. Issues that we have, and we condone it. We just sort of say, oh, chalta hai. And we expect the elevator mechanic, we expect the elevator company to take care of this. Buttons, it's like fun, and now it's gone even more, because now with the COVID situation, everybody thinks that it is free thing and you can use the key to push buttons. Buttons are not to be operated with keys. Buttons are supposed to be used with your finger, and if anybody thinks that they're going to get infected by COVID on account of touching the button for a microsecond, they're mistaken. You got more reasons to get infected by COVID, but everything that is happening around the elevator. Now, if you handle the elevator in this manner, how do you expect the elevators to function? How do you expect the elevator to service you? How do you expect the elevators to be safe? The picture on the right is where you have an inspection box, and the inspection box cover has been damaged, has been removed, and there are lots of things that you can access from this. Now, I've heard people say, no, but your elevator should be, built sturdy enough. It doesn't work that way. I mean, do we tell the car company that your car has to be sturdy enough to take on any kind of nuisance that happens to it? Any kind of damage, I mean, the way you use it, if you misuse it, you can't go and tell the car company that, okay, a car should be designed to ensure that the misuse can be handled. So this is an interesting picture. So this is an elevator which stopped functioning, and if you can see, there's a brick on top of the door operator. This is the door operator, and this block has fallen from one of the top floors when somebody was doing the lobby work there. How do you expect the elevator to run? Yet, what we do not recognize in this situation is that this block could have created safety violations, could have got short circuits, and we could have had an incident here. We could have had somebody getting killed. Another issue that comes up is inadequate public awareness. This is an accident which took place. I'm not sure, but I think the child got killed, but we have not included as one of the accidents, where went to a mall, and his guardians were involved in shopping, and they left the boy to play around with the escalator, and the net result, the escalator dragged him up and killed. I mean, he fell and had an accident, but I believe he died. So what are we doing about it? I'm proud to be one of the founding trustees of the Elevator and Escalator Safety Trust, which was established in 2008. We have got 8TG benefits. It qualifies for CSR as required by the Company Act. It's got FCRA approvals also. There is a program which is basically focused on children, which is about 8.5 minutes. And, it's in Indian English. We got it dubbed in Indian English, Bengali, Hindi, Kannada, Gujarati, Malayalam, Marathi, Tamil, Telugu. It's been done in Indian English. It has been done in Hindi. It has been done in Marathi. It has been done in Tamil. The saddest thing is I had gone and talked to people in Karnataka, and I was assured that if you translate into Kannada, we will do it. We translate into Kannada, spending money, and not one program has been done by the same people who assured me that they will do it. And I'm so upset, because when I now write to them and ask them what happened, there's no response. Now this trust runs on support from the industry. I mentioned Johnson List first, because in many ways they have transferring almost the entire CSR benefit. I mean, the CSR, what the compulsions that they have responsibility, it is being transferred to the trust. Fujitec, Hitachi, Otis, Shinra, Toshiba, and ThyssenKrupp are the other companies that are supporting this program. Now, we have over 3,000 companies in India related to components or elevators in this country. And we just have a handful of companies who are associated with this. I have personally gone to malls and talked about conducting this program, and they sort of, rubbish it. They say, how much money will you pay us for me to conduct a program which benefits their users? There are housing societies we have gone to, and they are like, oh, no, we don't have the time for it. I've gone to schools. I personally gone to schools where schools have rebuffed me. Now, of course, this cannot happen without volunteers. This cannot happen without donations. And our request is, for heaven's sake, let us please get involved. Let not a child, let not anybody get hurt just because they do not know the do's and the don'ts of the elevators. Marzina Chitnis is the executive director for this trust. I'm going to keep this number here for a little while. If you want to note it down, please note it down and call her. Incidentally, the government of Maharashtra, Chief Lieutenant, we are going to be doing programs at railway station. When I say we, it'll be Otis who have volunteered to take it up. They'll be doing it at railway stations. But that's just all a drop in the whole ocean. Now, if you want to note down the number as you write it down, I just can't understand the apathy. I point fingers at the industry where this qualifies for CSR initiative. What morality do you have to go and invest that CSR thing in something which is totally away from your industry, when you can support the industry in doing something good for the industry? What moral grounds based on what moral grounds do you go and invest your CSR money in other activities? I cannot understand why the industry has a problem in getting volunteers to go to schools. And schools, in many cases, there are members of the employees who are PTA members who find it difficult to go to their schools and teach their children how to use elevators and escalators safely. And people think that, okay, everybody knows how to use elevators and escalators. If you are in an affluent family, you need to know it. I can't remember a time when I've been to a mall or an airport, and not just India, around the world, where I've not had to caution somebody on how what they're doing is dangerous. So we have something. Yes, public awareness is a problem. There's an elevator and escalator safety trust which is there, which has been set up. These programs are all conducted free because based on donations we get from a company like Johnson Lifts. We are not making any ground. Up to date, we have trained less than 400,000 people since 2008. That's just a drop of the ocean in this country. And then we say that, oh, we need safety. Okay, these are some of the things that we do put up. Again, I will just leave it here for a little while. If you contact Marzina, and if you're talking about, she will ensure that you get these handouts. You can ensure that it is distributed within the society. Just contact her. She will more than be happy to give you this these handouts. Okay. Now, with the public users, there's some misconceptions which I need to address, which are, some of the things which clutter people's mind. One of the first things is, in case you're trapped in an elevator, you need to remain calm. You need to relax. There is no way on earth you will suffocate an elevator because the elevator car is not airtight. And the reason why you will feel like you're suffocating is because you start panicking. And, I know people will say, oh, but it's very easy for you to say. Let me tell you that I suffer from claustrophobia. Claustrophobia to the extent that I cannot sit in the middle seat of an airline. So I fully understand when somebody says, oh, I got stuck in an elevator and I started panicking. I fully understand. But panic does not help you anyway. There is no way, if the elevator has been maintained well, that you will have an accident because you got stuck. What you need to do is operate the alarm and the intercom. I know many cases where the alarm and the intercom doesn't work, and that is where you, as users, as a society or a building, you need to keep checking to ensure all these safety devices work. And at the end of the day, one crucial thing when you're trapped in an elevator, for heaven's sake, do not try to attempt to rescue yourself. There are many accidents that happen, not just in India, across the world, when somebody tries to attempts to rescue themselves. And we have also had situations where people who are not competent try to attempt a rescue operation. If you are not competent to do a rescue operation, for heaven's sake, please do not do it. In many of the buildings, it's a security personnel who do the rescue operation. And when I'm in a building, I often ask, I said, do you know how to do a emergency rescue? When is the last time you've been trained? And the response that comes in is scary because many of them have not been trained at all. Many of them have not even had a refresher course. And there, you're keeping your lives in their hands. Automatic rescue devices. There is a feeling that you put in an automatic rescue device and you will never get stuck. That is incorrect. I need to clarify. Despite what any salesperson will say, an automatic device comes into operation only on power failure. That is, if the power fails, it will come into operation. If you have a fault in the elevator, the safest thing is for the elevator to shut down. You should not be moving the elevator when there is a fault because you do not know what the fault is. And the automatic rescue device will operate only if all the safeties are intact. And so if it doesn't function, do not panic again. Stay composed, stay relaxed in the elevator. I know there are elevator companies who come and say, we put an automatic device, we put 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, and you have a safe device, you'll never get stuck. It's incorrect. Another thing is, many of us now with the light curtains for the elevator detectors, we have a tendency of using the light curtains to hold the door. For heaven's sake, don't do it. We could have a situation where the light curtain is not working. These are all electronic things. The light curtain is to prevent a situation where as you're walking in and out, it doesn't come and hit you. But if we start playing around with it, we could have a problem. And for heaven's sake, do not use your hand to stop the door. If you miss an elevator, all you need to do is wait for the next elevator. Wait a few seconds more. You do not need to wait long. I mean, again, few seconds, assuming that the building is adequately lit. For heaven's sake, do not use your hand to stop an elevator door. Another thing is we keep talking about fire lift. For those of you who know about it, please understand that it's a fireman's lift where the firemen are supposed to use in a fire scenario. And there are certain things about it. I'm not going into the technicalities of it. But one thing that is very clear, which we need to understand, even firemen don't understand, is that a fireman's lift is not fireproof. It is not as if it will not catch fire. There is a way of ensuring that it is safe, and that's got nothing to do with the elevator. It's got more to do with how the building is designed. If you remember, I showed you the protected lobby in the beginning. The other thing that I need to also stress on is, unlike the US, elevator and escalator spares are not available in the open market in India. So if there is somebody who comes to you and says that, I will maintain your elevator at 10% or 20% of the cost of the OEM, the question you need to be thinking is, first is, of course, like I said, if he's at 20%, you need to ask yourself the question, how is it that he's managing to do it at 20%? And the next question you need to ask is, where is he getting the spares when these spares are not available in the open market? For instance, if it's an Otis elevator, Otis does not have a shop where they keep selling these spares, things that you need to be aware of. Certificate inspection, I'm just giving you a few examples. This is a certification which was touted and given to a client, and I went through the whole thing and I realized that this certificate had nothing to do with elevators, but the client was so impressed and he wanted to buy. Fortunately, I managed to stop him. But using this certificate, I believe this supplier has managed to sell a lot of equipment around the country. So just because you get a certificate in hand doesn't mean that it's all safe and it's all good. Technology also, I'm just sort of putting it across, just because they come and give you big technology names and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily make everything safe and good. Okay, the Elevator and Escalator Component Manufacturer Association of India, or IGMAI as it's known, was set up towards addressing this problem. The mission is to support the growth of the elevator and escalator by promoting continuous improvement of safety and quality standards through education, community networking, etc., etc. It's a growing organization. It's slowly growing, and we got more members. I mean, this is slightly old. We have got more members coming in. We also have category of citizen members for people who are not necessarily from the elevator industry, but would like to be aware of what is going on. We have webinars. We have got trainings of things. We also have platforms where you can address your concerns and your issues. Those of you who would like to become a member, please write to membership@igmai.com, and the phone number is 98400 86728. I mean, I'll just keep this slide for here for a little bit more. So unfortunately, because of the pandemic and all, we really haven't managed to sort of get into a physical meeting and thrash issues, but we still have lots and lots of meetings. I think we already had some 58, 60 meetings to address various issues. The matter we talked about, the having one nation, one rule and one act is something which IGMAI is taking up. But I would strongly request this platform that you have, take it up, because I believe that is the single most important issue that needs to be addressed. So assuming that you have noted the email ID and the phone number, I'll just go on to the next towards the end of it. So we see a lot of news coming up saying that there was no cabin and the person fell down into the hoistway, and technically it is something that is impossible, because we need to understand that there is nothing on the car door, sorry, on the landing door, which can open it, because the landing door is opened by the door operator, which is on top of the car. So the car is not there. There's no way on earth the lift can open. Unfortunately, we have been having incidents like this, and the consumers, the police, and the industry is willing to sort of accept this kind of a thing, which we know technically is not possible unless there's a ghost who opens the door. And sadly, this is an insurance advertisement which has come up that they have also picked it up. Then normally when I see something like this, I address it and say that it's not right. However, we have had so many incidents where something like this now becomes an advertisement by Policy Bazaar. So again, let me repeat, if you hear or you see an incident where the landing door has opened and somebody walks into it and there's no cabin there, please understand that it is criminal negligence. It is something that can never, ever happen. Okay, this is just an exhibition that we have. Again, we are looking in terms of safety, quality, and promoting business. Some of the things which are there. This is December 1st, 2nd, 3rd. You will get a little bit more of understanding in terms of technology, because there'll be a lot of components that are exhibited. If you are interested in, please do think about visiting that. Okay, I'm coming to the end of it. I mean, I start with the first slide that I had indicated. Safety is binary. Either it is safe or it is not safe. And I do appreciate that there is a thing that is going on in Maharashtra, but looking at Maharashtra on its own doesn't help. In fact, whenever these accidents happen, one of the responses that I get from many of the elevator companies, oh, it's not our elevator. And I keep saying that as long as you do not have a mechanism to ensure that your friends, your family use only your elevators, none of us have the business of saying that it is not our elevator. None of us have the business of saying that it is not our building. Today, the way the world is, we are dependent, and we go from building to building. We are dependent upon elevators of every make, kind, and whatever. And it is not as if somebody in Maharashtra doesn't go to other states. So focusing on just Maharashtra as such, I think defeats the purpose in many ways, and it is essential that you expand the outlook beyond. And like I said, that just focusing on inspections on its own does not help. You really need to go and look at what the situation is everywhere. And one of the things that we need very clearly and on a urgent basis is to ensure that the whole nation has one act and one standard, one code, and one act. We cannot have a situation where Gujarat follows something else, Madhya Pradesh follows something else, Andhra Pradesh follows nothing, and Maharashtra follows something else. This is something that we need to attend to I mean, it's like the most serious thing that needs to be attended to immediately. Otherwise, I mean, like I say, the next statistics could be one of us. And at that point of time, are we going to sit back and say, oh, but we did this in Maharashtra, or we did this in Karnataka, but in our elevator company, everything is safe? Are we going to be waiting for that? With that, I think I will stop my presentation and give it back to the chair.
Excellent. Truly appreciate the way you have explained things and your PowerPoint presentation also. And it is definitely be going to help for the knowledge and experiences you have shared for the benefit of our friends and giving us a lot of inputs and ideas for our purposes. I thank you once again, Mr. Tech Matthew.
My pleasure.
Mr. Mohammed Afzal, over to you, please.
Yeah. Mr. Matthews, I had two questions in mind.
Yes, please.
When we talk about accidents, which is the one person that we can point out the blame? This is one. Second thing is when you talk about one act. So how would you explain the benefits and the pros and cons of one act as compared to a single act of Maharashtra?
Okay, let me answer your first question. Is it me who is echoing?
Yes.
No, my voice is echoing.
Okay. I say,
No,
in case
I
of.
heard your question. I heard your question. I was just trying to address your. My voice is echoing.
Yes, sir. You're going.
मोहम्मद साहब आप अपना म्यूट कर दीजिए ना 2 मिनट के लिए ठीक है
Yeah.
मिस्टर मैथ्यू प्लीज गो अहेड प्लीज
Yeah. So the first question, if you did remember, I mean, I'd say that one fatality. I mean, the statistics at Henrich's pyramid actually works. It's 30,000 incidents which lead to that one incident. So it doesn't happen just because of one particular aspect. It is like from the design stage onwards, there are issues that are coming in. So if everything is good, you have enough elevators, it has been designed well, it has been installed well, it is maintained well. Now, well is like is a small but a big word. There should be no fatality. So when there is a fatality, it's going to be very difficult to establish responsibility unless you go back to the entire aspect. So do we investigate an accident once it happens? The answer is no. If we don't investigate the accident, what we do is we first find the first bakra who is available. And invariably, the first bakra that we catch hold of is the elevator company and the mechanic. I mean, I've seen a number of incidents where the mechanic is put behind bars and then we start wondering what's to be done. And when we get into the investigation of it, like for instance, there's one incident which took place and somebody got hurt. The first thing that happened is they lodged a complaint against the mechanic. We went through the entire process and realized that it was a design flaw. Now, the design was done by somebody in abroad. That guy got scot-free. Okay. Now, we have a situation where maintenance is compromised, where we get some random person to come and maintain your elevator. Now, two things. When you talk about who is to be blamed, first, when the society, I mean, your housing society, when the society committee gave this maintenance contract to that person, did they do the due diligence? And invariably, the reason why they gave the maintenance contract to somebody else is to save money. I mean, I don't see any reason why they would have given it to somebody else. Yes, sometimes there are cases where the service is so bad that they give it to somebody else. Two, that maintenance company, how did they get the permission to become a maintenance company? Obviously, I mean, a state like Maharashtra requires a lift contractor's license to do that job. How did he become the lift contractor? So if you were to talk about a situation where the maintenance was given to somebody else and the maintenance company erred, and that is why the accident took place, there are two people who are involved. The society, which probably to save a few bucks without doing the due diligence, they went and gave the maintenance contract to that company. The maintenance company is always culpable because they have taken on something which is not in their cup, it's not their cup of tea. Third, who gave him the license, the lift contractor's license? So my thing on this is, it is normally not one person who is to be held responsible. Okay, that is to answer that particular aspect. The other issue is, more often than not, we get into the blame game after an accident. We are looking in terms of identify who is wrong, whom should we punish. And the moment that thing comes up, what happens? We try to hide the issue rather than getting into the detail to ensure and look at how do we prevent it? How do we ensure that it doesn't happen again? We get into who do we penalize? Who do we punish or put behind bars? And with that kind of a thought process, we don't have a solution. And I've seen incident after incident where it has got pushed into the carpet because the idea is who do we put behind bars? So it's not a simple answer to say who do we blame. There are multiple things that require to be done. The second thing, in terms of that one act, how does it benefit? So we need to recognize that no single state has that big a market that you can design a product for that particular state. They will design a product for the whole country. Now, when you have that kind of a situation, and states have different rules or different acts or different requirements, what will end up happening is they will design to the lowest level, lowest reference level. So if Andhra Pradesh doesn't have anything, the chances are that Andhra Pradesh will set the standards and everything for the rest of the country. we will not get into a situation where people are, I mean, like for instance, you are fighting for lift inspections in Maharashtra. If you do it on an all India basis and it is under the national central government, what happens is they will set the norms for the entire country in terms of inspections, in terms of the standards, in terms of the codes, in terms of certifications. Now, if you look at automobiles, my understanding is automobiles comes under central legislation. Why? In terms of criticality, I would say that an elevator is probably more critical and more dangerous than an automobile. But we have a central rule for automobiles. And I cannot understand why we would have a situation where we leave it to each state to decide how an elevator should be operational. And forget about the state, even in terms of other authority, like I gave you an example of CF, the requirements between Thane and Mumbai are different. And that's because it's a free for all. And the reason why it's a free for all is because we do not have a single rule and a single act. I've seen suppliers complaining, we cannot keep manufacturing like this because at the end of the day, volumes give you the cost benefit, right? And if you need to, make 100 for here and 100 for there, it's not going to work. And okay, I mean, even put it across, I know that people who hide behind the garb of the fact that, but Andhra Pradesh is requiring this and Gujarat is requiring this. So somebody who uses an elevator in Gujarat wants it in the way it's in Gujarat. I mean, I'm using Gujarat because the neighboring state, not Gujarat. I mean, I could even say Karnataka or West Bengal or whatever it is. Or, we want the elevator exactly like it is in West Bengal. Why? So that's the reason why I'm saying this. The central, single, one nation, one standard, one code, one act is the most crucial thing that we need to set out right today. And it also comes down to the fact that if there is an elevator contractor, and if there are central rules saying that this is what an elevator contract has to be, I mean, if you look at a registrar of companies, it's the same. Yes, sir. Yeah, you'll get.
Yeah, Mr. Matthew, there was another thing that came into my mind is when the parts are not available or they are made to some local vendors on a lathe machine, don't you think so? There should be some quality control standard on the parts which are locally made so that will ensure that the accidents don't take place.
So the new, I did make a mention there's a new standard that is coming into existence, and the new standard requires certification of all the safety components. So this local component that you're talking about is an issue. But right now, whatever licensing, whatever inspection happens only after a completed elevator. But an elevator safety is dependent upon individual components. And what you said is very right, that we need to tackle it at the component. And one of the reasons why this component level association was formed was to handle this. Now we have a new law, a new standard that is coming in, which requires certification of safety components. Okay. Now you made a mention that it is local people we need to take care of. Trust me, some of the imported components that I've seen are also rubbish. They also, it is rubbish just because of the fact that they can get away with it. So it's not just the local components. The local components today, anybody can become a component manufacturer. Anybody can become an elevator company. That's a problem. But just because it comes from abroad, don't be confident that everything is hunky-dory. China is one of the biggest exporters into India. And I often say that they ask you is how much money do you have in your pocket? And that's how they decide the cost of the elevator. So if you have 100 rupees, you'll get something. If you have 1,000 rupees, you'll get something else. And why? Because we don't have component level certification. That's again one of the things that IGMA is trying to attend, saying that anything that is brought in from abroad has to have a certain level of certification, has to be certified to be meeting Indian standards and codes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Hemant, what I would request the other participants, if they have any query or if they have any suggestions, please be.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mohammed, by the way, I would also like to say कि मैथ्यू साहब ने काफी पॉइंट्स बताए हैं जो हम लोग अगर आपको याद है तो हमने पिछले 3 वेबिनार्स में काफी कुछ हम लोगों ने डिस्कस किया है जो चर्चा का विषय लगभग वही था इफ यू रिमेम्बर I would like to ask a similar question, not exactly a similar question, हाँ, वो सारे क्वेश्चन जो पिछले 3 वेबिनार में घुमा फिरा के पूछ चुके हैं, पर चूँकि मैथ्यू साहब इंडस्ट्री एक्सपर्ट हैं, तो मैं उनका भी व्यूज़ जानना चाहता हूँ इस चीज़ के बारे में। With your permission, Mr. Matthew, I'd like to ask you one question. There are 4 questions actually. So should I go ahead, Mr. Matthew?
Please.
Okay. Now my question is कि before this technical specifications or equipment designs were finalized, was there any opinion or studies taken from civil society member जैसे मेरे जैसे लोग या मोहम्मद जैसे लोग या civil society members means actual users?
Okay. First thing is it is not that it is being launched today. The standards and codes have existed before I even joined the industry 32 years back. So we have always had standards and codes. And what has happened is with time, with like what Mr. Mohammed Afzal said, is when we see an accident or see an incident, we keep modifying the standards and the codes. So the question that I had asked is there anything in the standards and the codes that we would need to replace to avoid any of these accidents? And the answer is no. Second thing is do you get information? Do you get feedback from the civil society? So the Bureau of Indian Standards, the way it operates is um, once there's a draft that is formed, it is available on their website for citizens to comment. But then what happens is even people to whom they send the standards and the code don't look at it. So the Bureau of Indian Standards makes it available for discussion, for comments, and for giving your opinion and saying what all are the changes that have been made. And right now, it is such a situation where every comment that comes up is discussed and responded to. And incidentally, I'm one of the reasons why I am there on the standards committee is as an independent voice. I mean, my company is a thing because as an independent voice, because I don't represent any elevator company. So it is available.
Okay.
The second question.
Mr. मोहम्मद साहब एक
Yeah.
हम जब हमारे बीच में इतने बड़े इंडस्ट्री एक्सपर्ट आए हुए हैं तो लेट मी ask so that it becomes useful to us for our purposes, for the purposes which we are holding this webinar. मैथ्यू साहब ऐसा है कि when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, maybe like this 50 बरस पहले की बात बता रहा हूँ मैं, जब मैं लिफ्ट में ट्रैवल करा करता था उस समय, तो उस समय ग्रिल हुआ करता था, ऐसे शटर खींचा बंद किया, बाहर का खींचा बंद किया, उसमें मैं आर पार देख सकता था. एंड टिल टुडे आई रिसर्च ऑन द नेट व्हेन मिस्टर मोहम्मद सेड कि हमें ये काम करना है. I did a lot of research. I spoke to my overseas clients also. I spoke to some people even in China. The word you mentioned China, I spoke to some people in China also. मेरा प्रश्न ये है कि वो जो ग्रिल लिफ्ट था उसमें हम आस पार देख सकते थे, हवा आना जाना हो सकता था, किसी कारणवश लिफ्ट बंद हो जाती थी तो हम वहां से चिल्ला भी सकते थे वगैरह वगैरह, और हमें वो एक फोबिया नहीं होता था, हमें वो सफोकेशन नहीं होता था, मुझे वो हाइपर टेंशन नहीं होता था, मेरा ब्लड प्रेशर नहीं बनता था जब लिफ्ट सडनली बंद हो जाती है और मैं उस 6 साइड के क्यूबिक केज में, स्टील क्यूबिक केज में मैं बंद हूं. आपने बताया कि उसमें थोड़ा बहुत वेंटिलेशन है. यू डिड नॉट से कि उसमें सफिशिएंट वेंटिलेशन है, लेकिन अगर मैं ये कहूं, मेरा खुद का तजुर्बा अगर मैं कहूं तो मैं ये कहता हूं कि उसमें वेंटिलेशन practically very less है to sustain or to like they don't allow me to give me a medical hypertension. So my question is, why was this time tested and extensively collapsible grill abandoned? उस समय ये एक्सटेंसिवली यूज होता भी, जो ये मेटल केज आने शुरू हुए हैं ये अभी कुछ सालों में आने शुरू हुए, लेट अस से 20 ऑड इयर्स अगर मैं एक फिगर दूं तो ये कोलैप्सिबल ग्रिल डोर्स किस कारण से अबैंडन हुए, क्या कारण था इसका, ये मेरा प्रश्न है मैथ्यू साहब.
Okay, I'll start with the first point that you said. When I said there is enough ventilation in the car, there is enough ventilation in the car to take care of the capacity of people in the elevator. So even if the fan is not working, in fact, I often say that we should have a battery backed up fan also in case the power fails. This ventilation is adequate to ensure that, because what happens, the hoistway is open and the hoistway is not a seal packed hoistway. The reason why you end up with a feeling of suffocation, which I'm saying, is because there's a panic. And I understand what you're saying because of the fact that I've got claustrophobia. You put me in a car, I mean, forget about car. I mentioned this when I was talking about it, that for me on an airline, if you put me on the center seat, I start panicking. I start getting, suffocation. I start getting breathlessness. In fact, Jet Airways used to be very lenient about it. They used to always ensure that I would get an aisle seat, even if it was a fully booked flight, because of this problem. So the reason why you feel suffocated, I fully appreciate, understand it. It is not because there is not adequate openings in the car. It is just because of the fact that we sort of, get palpitations because you have that phobia. So if you're stuck in an elevator, it's absolutely okay. And I remember, and another thing you need to remember is, when you have to see around to see what is happening inside, there are things that also happen with it. And the reason why collapsible gates were removed is because there are numerous kids who have lost their hands in collapsible gate lifts. There used to be a cricketer who used to be, I think, playing for Andhra Pradesh. He had lost his hand inside a collapsible gate lift when he was probably 7 or 8 years old. He used to still play. He used to still continue playing for one of the states. I don't remember what. And the reason he came into the news, and after that I couldn't track him down, is one of the World Cups. Sachin Tendulkar got him to bowl to him to tackle Shane Warne. And he lost his hand in the collapsible gates. And that's the reason why collapsible gates have been removed. Now, you talked about having talked to China, Europe, everywhere. All these places, collapsible gates, not even collapsible gates, perforated gates have been stopped. Even our neighboring country like Bangladesh, they do not have perforated gates. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they do not sell perforated gates. India is probably the last place anywhere in the world where perforated collapsible gates are still being used. In many ways, perforated gates, I mean, these collapsible gates, okay, technology-wise is simple. I mean, there are not many things that can go wrong. In many ways is dangerous. And that's the reason why it was removed out. It is not a time-tested thing. It was something which happened because it was easier to handle. You didn't need too much of technology to get it operational. Yeah, it's really not time-tested.
Okay. I have got two more questions. My question is, why was this vicarious criminal liability and related prosecution provisions not provided for violating BIS or NBC parameters?
So I did talk to this about BIS. So BIS made it very clear that they are not an enforcing agency. Their job is to lay out the standards. Then it is up to right now, the state, that is the state of Maharashtra or whichever state, is to enforce it. They are the people who will take on the liability or, the criminal investigation or whatever needs to be done. And Maharashtra Lift Act, I remember there was a discussion about doing this, but it didn't really materialize because the people who were involved in it got transferred out. And again, if you get into a central law kind of a situation, I think something can happen. But if you go on a state level, I think it's going to be a problem. So the Bureau of Indian Standards has the limitation that they cannot enforce, they cannot push it on somebody that you have to follow this. Their job is to lay out the standards.
Okay, my last question is, you have already mentioned that the lift or elevator have an association or a council, like how advocates have an bar association, how chartered accountants have an association, and so and so. Architects also. So, in the presumptions that there is an association or a council, and if yes, did this association or council frame rules or guidelines for the AMC vendors or manufacturers, or give their opinion report to the lift department?
Okay, so all the associations that I talked about, each state has multiple associations. The elevator division of the Indian Electronic and Electrical Electronic Manufacturers Association and IGMI, none of them have a say in anything that when it comes into rules and laws. They have no say. IGMAI is desperately trying to find its position and trying to get its say in terms of what needs to be happening. Unfortunately, these associations have no say. And in many ways, it's the association's fault also, because some of these associations have not really done what they're supposed to do. In fact, some of these associations I know have looked in terms of undermining the basic standard and the code. So there's an intent, there's an objective, but they really have no authority, no say in anything.
Mr. Matthew, last in one of the webinars, I had suggested to Mr. Mohd, who is our committee president for filing this legal petition in the court, कि हमें ये विकारियस लाइबिलिटी का इन्फोर्समेंट के लिए प्ली करना है, वन. सेकेंडली, आई टोल्ड हिम कि सिविल सोसाइटी मेंबर्स की कमेटी गठित किए बगैर, उनको एक्टिवली इन्वॉल्व करे बगैर कोई भी पॉलिसी डिसीजन लिफ्ट इंडस्ट्री, एएमसी, एनर्जी डिपार्टमेंट ना ले. आई वांट टू नो योर ओपिनियन ऑन दिस थिंग.
I think it's a valid request, but what happens is, if the focus of the civil society, in fact, I had a long chat with Mr. Mohammed Afzal on, yes, it was a good thing to talk about inspections. Inspections are required. I won't say that they are not required. It is essential. But then that on its own has a limit to what it can do. Now, if the civil society needs to ensure that you achieve your objective, you need to go into the component level. Okay, now you're talking about that new rules and new acts and new standards should not be incorporated without the civil society knowing about it. I said that any new standard, any amendment that is being put, it is available on the Bureau of Indian Standards, and it is expected that the civil society will review it. Yes, I know it's a cumbersome process because you need to go to see what all drafts are available, etc., etc. It's a cumbersome process, but it's available there for comments. It's available there for opinions, and each of those comments and opinions are responded to.
Sir, what I meant was it should be made mandatory, not optional.
Yes,
that the civil society committee should be established.
Yeah.
And without the opinion of the civil society committee, nothing should move forward, because it is our life. We are the users.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. But then, I mean, like for the standards and committees, I'll give you some of the members of the standards committee who are there. There is an activist who is there. There is somebody from the Architects Association who is there. There are developers who are there. There are users who are there. So it's a mixed group of people who are on that panel. Now, unfortunately, what ends up happening is, when it gets into technicality, like let's say, for instance, we get into the calculations of a rail, the rail that has to be done on which the elevators run, or the calculations for a rope. The civil society, they won't understand what those calculation is. And I've seen them sitting through where we ask for comments, and it's obviously beyond their technical competency. What you can then actually influence is the process. Now, BIS are not allowed to lay down a process. As a civil society, the contribution you can do is a process, and that process is not with the Bureau of Indian Standard, it's with the implementing authority. So, for instance, you can make a statement, and you can make a stand saying that, okay, in the eventuality of an accident or an incident, this is the investigating process that has to be followed, and the civil society should be given a right to ask for this. But if a civil society, without understanding the calculation that go into an elevator, after 32 years, 33 years, let me tell you, I do not get into component level design, because I do not know it. I do not have the experience for it.
Mr. Matthew, one moment. Let me explain to you a particular circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
When you drive a Maruti 800 car, when you drive a particular car, the steering wheel is bland, is vague, like symmetrical, ठीक है, totally round है. But when you drive a Ford vehicle, what a Ford vehicle did, it took in contributions from the civil society कि आप बैठो steering wheel पे और मुझे ये बताओ कि steering wheel में आपको क्या लग रहा है. तो वो यूजर बोलता है कि steering wheel में मुझे grip नहीं मिल रहा है. तो बोला ठीक है, हम रबराइज करते हैं. अब नहीं, मुझे इंडेंट्स चाहिए उसके अंदर। मुझे जब वो एक स्टीयरिंग व्हील है फोर्ड का, हर फोर्ड की गाड़ी में, जहाँ पे व्हील पे कुछ हिस्सा इंडेंट्स दिया हुआ है, कुछ पोट्रूडिंग आउट दिया हुआ है, स्मूथ पोट्रूडिंग आउट। सो दिस इज व्हाट इज आई मेंट बाय सिविल सोसाइटी की टेक ओपिनियन ऑफ द सिविल सोसाइटी कि आपको क्या चाहिए। आप अपना टेक्निकलिटी सिविल सोसाइटी के ओपिनियन के बेस्ड पे फिर आप अपने पार्ट्स वगैरह वगैरह बनाइए आप। That is what I'm trying to say.
So
If the civil society, one moment, sir, if the civil society says, I want a grill door, it was not that only for a isolated incident, I closed in the grill, collapsible grill gates. There are other ways also of installing the grill gates and so and so. In a Ford vehicle, you have got a microprocessor controls. Same thing is not available in other vehicles. So this was what I wanted to convey कि सिविल सोसाइटी का ओपिनियन लीजिए कि सर मेरे को दरवाजा किस तरह का चाहिए, मुझे मेरा लिफ्ट का कैबिन किस तरह का होना चाहिए। एक बार आपको उसका फीडबैक मिलता है तो आप अपने डिजाइनर टेबल पे जाइए और वहां पे ड्राइंग चेंज करिए, वहां पे मटेरियल चेंज करिए। अगर सिविल सोसाइटी बोलता है मुझे कि मेरा फ्लोर मुझे ऐसा चाहिए, इट शुड बी with holes so that there is no leakage or something of that sort. So you design that thing that way. But if you are going to design a thing according to, if a technical person designs, the BIS or whosoever designs at its own whims and fancies, you are not the user, the majority of the user. Is there any problem in taking opinion from the civil society? That was my point.
okay,
He involved the civil society, sir.
okay. So let me just talk about the collapsible gate. It's not an isolated case. There were over 60 incidents that were recorded in a span of about 3 years where people got hurt in collapsible gates. 60 incidents. And again, what happens in India, you know how it is. The reported ones are 60 incidents. So it's not one case. I just gave you an example of something which came to the top of my mind. So when you say that the civil society insists on collapsible gate, knowing that it is safe, it's unsafe. Sorry, not safe. It's unsafe. It is something which the civil society doesn't have a say in it. Because technically, if there is a problem, technically, if there is an issue, the civil society say does not happen. Okay. Now, when it comes to an elevator, what are the things that a person as a layman sees in an elevator? First is your button. Second are your doors. Third is your elevator car. The buttons in the elevator car, the fan and the light. Okay. Now, the door, I told you the reason why it was made into solid doors. Okay. Now, you're even talking about collapsible gates. I talked to you about the accident things that have happened with collapsible gates. Now, you please tell me, how does somebody in a wheelchair use a collapsible gate? As a civil society, okay, for you it is claustrophobia. What does a person in a wheelchair do in a collapsible gate? What is a mother who has got a baby in her hand? How does she open this collapsible gate? I mean, are you saying with collapsible gate, because collapsible gate, when you talk about it, the grill gate, it is a manual door. You expect somebody who's on a wheelchair, who is somebody who's aged, who cannot, open the door on it. Are you trying to condemn him and make him stay in an apartment above? In fact, in 1999, 2000, I actually did a campaign against this with clear examples of how people were getting hurt. So for the comfort, a perceived comfort, saying that, okay, because of a collapsible gate, I can see around, or I can call and I can shout out to people. The civil society is asking for something that is dangerous. A civil society is asking, today we are talking about disability-friendly buildings. You put in a collapsible gate, that moment you put in a collapsible gate, it's no longer disabled-friendly. A person in a wheelchair cannot use a collapsible gate. Somebody who has a walking stick cannot open a collapsible gate. I know in my building it had collapsible gates. Now they're just changed into automatic door buildings. There was a gentleman who, after a period of time, would never come down till his servant would come, open the door, and it used to be chaos. Okay, now we got automatic door elevators, but because of the hoistway, it's a smaller door. He cannot still come down. That's a different matter. So the civil society needs to also understand what are the limitations to it. And I'm just using collapsible gate as an example.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, we have also had other things that have come up from the civil society. I will give you one example. The Haryana government has decided that every elevator should have a UPS, which will ensure that the elevator runs for 15 minutes. Yeah, on the face of it, it sounds great. Now, there are projects where it are 2-ton elevators, which are running, 4 meter per second elevators. The number of batteries that you require for one elevator is 10 or 12, big, huge truck batteries. Now, it has come from the civil society and the government has implemented it without recognizing the danger that you are creating by having a battery of, a huge number of batteries inside the building. Yes, all of us have, UPSs in our house, which is all very good. It's all good. But here we have a battery. And this particular one project that I'm involved in, there are 40 elevators. We did the calculation and you require about 500 batteries to confer with this. So what we also need to recognize is there are some technicalities which need to be discussed.
Okay.
So, it is not one thing alone. And if you look at the harmonized guidelines for the disabled, collapsible gates, under no way can it be in place. Now, there was an issue that came up on buttons. So, COVID, we need to have app-based solution. It's one of the requirements came from somebody in the thing to the committee saying that you need to have app-based devices. Yes, on the face of it, it is great. You have app-based devices to register your call. Now, we are assuming that everybody uses an elevator has an app. Is that the case? The answer is no. So finally, we had to tell them, I said, sorry, this is not something where we can write a code. Okay, a particular building, if somebody wants an app-based thing, yes, they can go and do it. It's a feature. But we cannot make it a rule. We cannot make it something that has to be enforced. Yes, the civil society has to have a say. But it cannot be a say where safety is compromised. It cannot be a say where convenience is compromised. It cannot be a say where there are people in between who are getting hampered in their day-to-day lives.
Sure.
Even in terms of collapsible gates, a collapsible gate, the speed cannot be more than 0.60 meter per second. We are talking about a 5-story or a 6-story building. How do you put in a collapsible gate in a 28-floor building where the lift has to be running at 2.5 meter per second? You will have so much of air coming into you, you will not be able to stand in the car at 4 meter per second, 6 meter per second, it will not work. So there are issues that we need to recognize. And I think as a civil society, what needs to be done is, and trust me, when we talk about the standards and the codes, it is open up and we do get a lot of feedback. For instance, like the Metro Corporation, Delhi Metro Corporation, they really, I think, make it even tougher than what the civil society is asking for. They come and ask for requirements. Some of them are possible, some of them are not possible. We have to turn around and tell them technically, sorry, it's not possible, or technically it is unsafe. So these
Okay,
are
Mr. Matthew.
what needs to be done? What needs to be done from a civil society process, which needs to be enforced, are processes. So who is your elevator contractor? Yes, you need to have a say in it, saying that the elevator contractor has to have a certain qualification, certain experience, has to go through a licensing process before he's made an elevator contractor. Your maintenance contractor has to have a certain qualification because you cannot be expected to know it. But the civil society needs to say that a person without these qualifications cannot be given a license to, install and maintain an elevator. You need to have a say in saying that, okay, if you are giving a component, there has to be a certifying agency which says this component meets the thing as per Indian standards. So rather than looking in terms of that, those technical aspects, what needs to be really looked at is the process behind those technical aspects.
Okay, Mr. Matthew. Afzal साहब कुछ आप बोल रहे थे
I think
before we take the question
Srikanth
of
had his hand up for a very long time.
Yes, Mr. Srikanth, I think so. You go first, I'll be after that.
Mr. Shrikant.
No, you're
Mr.
muted, sir.
Shrikant Kadu,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Sorry. I turn it on.
Okay,
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead.
There was 8 days back, there was some abnormal sound problem in our lift. And when upon contacting the AMC contractor, he suggested replacement a car shoe liner. Do you get me, sir? Hello?
Yes, go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir. Everybody is listening.
So it took procurement, it took nearly 8 days for the procurement to make these things available. This car shoe liner, small fiber part, but it took about 8 days, and the job itself was completed within just flat 4 to 5 hours. So what I mean to say, even for such small parts, it is procurement time is about, it takes about 8 days for procurement. Why do they not do the standardization as far as the small parts, minor parts are concerned? Why do they not do the standardization between the different brands of lift and make the parts availability comfortable, easily available? And one second question is that, sir, whether this collapsible door have been completely banned or what? Because our lift, 7-story building lift is as of now working with the landing as well as the car door collapsible. So is it banned or completely banned or not? Whether we can 7-story building like can use the collapsible doors, can go with collapsible doors.
Let me answer your second question first, last question first. Collapsible gates per se have not been banned. Perforated gates have been banned. So what happens is they bring in with an alligator gate where it is, let me just put my video on. So what happens is you have actually patra that they keep across between each of the thing, and so that it folds up. So the idea is that somebody will not put your hand in. And incidentally, on collapsible gates, one more thing I need to mention is the moment it's collapsible gates, it's no longer fire rated. So there's a fire, it's no longer fire rated. So it's allowed. So some of the buildings, what happens is collapsible gates, the hoistways are smaller. You cannot put an automatic door because an automatic door opens like this, or it opens to one side. So you need more space. So many of your existing buildings, like your 7-story building, ground plus 7,
Yeah.
the hoistway will be small. Most likely your capacity will be 6 passenger.
Yeah, 6
So
passenger, right.
if you try to put an automatic door elevator,
408 kg.
Yeah,
408 kg.
Yeah, 6 passengers. So the door becomes smaller. So that's an inconvenience.
That's
So what you would need to do is ensure that on the landing
hmm.
you have a swing door, assuming that the corridor in front of the elevator is large enough, or you need to get this what they call accordion doors. Okay, now I'm not a great fan of accordion doors because I used to keep joking that along with accordion doors, you need to give some dumbbells because there's a little bit more of effort in opening it. So some of these older buildings, you can survive with collapsible gates. It's not as if you need to change it because if there are limitations, you cannot do anything about it. So many of these things which are coming up is for the future. Okay. Your first question was related to parts. Okay. Now, you're talking about commonality of parts. So let me give you an example of something that I had. One of my hobbies is driving long distances or even on a bike, going long distances. So on the bike, I had a problem because tires were not available. And every manufacturer has a different kind of a tire requirement. Every bike might have it, but there's a different requirement. I couldn't get the tire which my bike needed. So virtually for some time, it was parked. Then on the car, I have a Hyundai Creta. My air condition, I was driving to the south where the heat had really picked up. My air condition packed off. The compressor blew up. I couldn't get the spare. I had to come back all the way to Bombay. In fact, I used to keep pouring water on myself because it was so hot. My mother and all were, the kind of temperature it is there. It is a fact around the world. In fact, even if you talk about plug points, like for instance, I'm using a Mac. Now the Mac connection is this. PowerPoint is the connection thing. It is a thing which around the world, many of these things, other than sizes, you cannot force suppliers into getting and standardizing something because at the end of the day, it is a question of their business, it's a question of their survival. Okay. Now, you talked about the part not being available for 8 days or 9 days. This is again something where a civil society needs to make it very clear. Somebody who is in the business of maintenance has to keep the essential parts available with him. 8 days is criminal. Now it's just a safety issue. It could have been something else also. It could have been like my compressor of the air conditioner where there was no part available anywhere. They didn't have it in Coimbatore. They didn't have it anywhere across the entire South Belt, and I had to come to Bombay before I could get it replaced. It's unpardonable. I actually wrote to Hyundai and said, how can you be in a situation like, no, they said it's a slow moving item. I said, does not matter. If I have a problem with my car and it is covered under a maintenance contract, I need to get the spare parts. Okay, maybe not in 1 hour, maybe not in 2 hours. I should be able to get it in at least a day. Now, as a civil society, I would say that it has to be enforced, it has to be ensured that somebody who is taken up a maintenance contract has to have access to the required spares. Okay, maybe you can say that if it's a machine, okay, it takes 3-4 more days because machine is a large item, maybe you will not carry it. If there's a controller that needs to be replaced for whatever may be the reason, you might not have it. But something like your car guide shoe has to be available as a spare. It's unpardonable that the person doesn't have the spare with it. If he doesn't have the spare with him and it's going to take him 8 days to get it, he has no business to take on your maintenance contract. The reason why he has a certain rate for the thing is because we also acknowledge the fact that he has to maintain spares.
Sorry for interruption. How normally it should take the time for making these parts available? As you said now that he should maintain inventory.
Okay.
So minimum number of days for a small part like this to make available, how much it should take?
So I'm not going to ask the name of the company. It could probably be a multinational, something like that. Normally, from anywhere in the country to get the spare, it is less than 48 hours.
48 hours.
So suppose it's in Bombay. The incident happened in Bombay. Obviously, I think you're based in Bombay. The incident happened in Bombay, and their spare warehouse is, let's say, in Bhopal. Okay, they didn't keep it in Bombay. Not a problem. Within 48 hours, they should be able to get it here.
Okay.
And you know, I also headed a service business. The service thing for somebody, and we used to annually keep checking on what was the store. We would keep checking the records to see what all are the components that get spoiled. And the guide shoe that you're talking about is something that should have been available with him as a spare. Now, I do not know who the maintenance company is, who it is, and there's a good possibility that it is not the OEM who is maintaining it. I do not know. Let's not mention names here, because intention is not to the good possibility is not the OEM who's maintaining it.
Mr. Mathew, we are running short of time. We'll take up the next question. Mr. Mohd Afzal, आप कुछ कह रहे थे?
I was talking about calling the government, the energy department calling for public opinion. Now, it has been observed by me, also during the petition that was filed in 2010, a committee was formed by the High Court, and it was very surprising that the manufacturers were in this committee. The principal secretary was there, the PWD officials were there, but they exclusively kept me out. So, what I have observed is when the energy department is, they are in the process of framing the rules. Now, while framing the rules, it becomes mandatory for them to call for public opinion. It's been observed that either they advertise in some very odd newspapers, which is not widely circulated, or there is no much public awareness created calling for public opinion. It is basically just a paperwork, just a process that they just want to complete. And they would want the least interference of the public. That's what I've observed. Any comments from Mr. Matthews?
Yeah. So, I think it's okay. So, it's interesting that you talk about this Lift Act and Lift rules. So, a small group of people, which I was also part of it, we start and drafted the first document where we went through the fact that it had to follow the Indian standards in terms of equipment, etc., etc. We talked about what are the minimum qualifications of a lift contractor, minimum qualifications of a mechanic, minimum qualifications of all these things. We also had a clause that was put in saying that these are the penalties. Okay, so we put the draft across, and then we were out of it. The small group, we were out of it. I do not know. I have no idea what the final document was. Still, I saw it on the web. In fact, we were not even given a copy of the final document. Yes, we did contribute a lot. And in between, what ended up happening, this would have turned out to be a good document. In between, what had happened is the people who were involved, the people who were pushing it, they disappeared. And my understanding was that this was being discussed with you, etc. That is my understanding. But then I think probably with the person having moved on and the people having been transferred and it having shifted from one department to the other department, in fact, we from the elevator industry also were lost. We didn't know who to talk to. So what you are saying is, and that act and rules in many ways are what the civil society requires to address. Whether it is the inspection, the fees that have to be paid, how it is to be inspected, what are the forms to be submitted, etc., etc. I mean, I think users have the right to have a say. But I really do not know what happened from here to here.
मिस्टर
My
मोहम्मद
question for you
ऐसा है
is
कि
saying that please get something in place. I mean, if you cannot get everything properly put in place, at least get something in place, because we cannot keep referring to 1939 and 1956.
मिस्टर अफजल, हाँ, अगर हम कमिटी की सिविल सोसाइटी की ओपिनियन के बारे में सिर्फ बात करते हैं तो वो इग्नोर किया जाएगा. बट इफ आई से द वर्ड मैंडेटरी सिविल सोसाइटी कमिटी, उसके कहे बगैर आप आगे नहीं बढ़ोगे. So that has to be our contention. I'll just repeat, civil society committee के बगैर आप आगे नहीं बढ़ोगे. That is the criteria.
Right.
So there is no question of opinion. Opinion तो हमारा बुलाओगे नहीं बुलाओगे, है ना. आप हमारे को पब्लिश कर दो पेपर में, अपने वेबसाइट में पब्लिश कर दोगे पेपर में. मिस्टर मैथ्यू, प्लीज अनम्यूट
It's
योरसेल्फ.
echoing. It's echoing.
Yes. So what I was trying to stress on, कि if I am being called for my opinion, I may be called, I may be not called, that is not mandatory then. Okay, you simply publish your own opinions on the website, on the news channels, media, वगैरह वगैरह, and then you say, okay, I'm calling my opinion. Nobody is reading all those things. But if you make it a mandatory कि भाई 5 की कमेटी होनी है, 50 की कमेटी होनी है, रोटेटिंग सिविल कमेटी होनी है, उनके ओपिनियन के बगैर आप इस पे आगे नहीं बढ़ोगे. The criteria was, it is my life and I am the user. Take my opinion first and then you do whatever you want to. But before taking my opinion, you will not proceed further. You got it? The committee's opinion, committee's report will be considered, not the opinion. The committee's report. That will be taken on record कि इस कमिटी में ये 11 लोग हैं, इनकी ये रिपोर्ट है, इनको हम कंसिडर कर रहे हैं या रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं. एटलीस्ट द कमिटी हैज समथिंग टू गो फॉरवर्ड टू इट. ओपिनियन इज random, vague. Anybody else has any questions before we conclude? We just have 4-5 minutes.
Yeah, could I just mention this? I think what you said is a very relevant point. But my request is, my suggestion is, please expand it beyond Maharashtra. Because if you just stick to Maharashtra, we are again getting into a situation where right across our border, there is something else. And like I said, the lowest level will always find predominance all around the country. So if it is, let's say, for instance, it's a maintenance process. Whatever is the lowest level, like for instance, one thing that has been put in is that there should be maintenance every month. But if you do not look at it on an all India basis, you are probably short selling all your efforts.
Yes, sir. Anybody has any question for Mr. Matthews, for Mr. Afzal before we conclude today's webinar?
Sir, may I speak?
Yes, madam. Fatima Fauzdar. Fatima Fauzdar is our panel advocate. Mr. Matthew is our industry expert for today. Fatima ji, please go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. A very good evening, Matthew, sir.
Good evening.
It was a wonderful session.
Don't add a sir to it, please. I have not met the Queen. So please don't add a sir. I have not met the Queen.
It's just out of respect. It has been a wonderful session. Lots of points. Of course, I'm not from a technical side.
The whatever parameters you mentioned and everything, even what Hemant sir said about the vicarious liability, I think that is a very important point that needs to be considered. And the other thing which you just spoke, that it should not be restricted only to the state of Maharashtra. We should think at it at a pan India level, where every state is concerned, because it's not just the life that in Maharashtra that needs to be protected. We need to protect every citizen of this country, where at least the lives are concerned. whether it's a child, an adult, somebody who is disabled, or even somebody young, and even an awareness is necessary. What you mentioned about volunteering for that program, I would definitely be interested. I will contact Chitnis ma'am, and let's see how it
It'll be
works
very
out.
embarrassed if you call it this, ma'am.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Any other participants has anything else to ask, please? We are concluding today's webinar. It's nearly 9:30. Mr. Mohammad Afzal?
I think so. Mr. Matthew has given us a lot of insight and points to be considered, and
Yes.
definitely we will be considering all those things what he has said and try to put it in our petition.
Okay.
Over to
So
you.
we will conclude today's webinar on behalf of all our participant friends. We say special thanks to Mr. Tuck Matthew for sharing his knowledge and experiences for the benefit of all our friends and giving us a lot of inputs and ideas for our purposes. Thank you once again, Mr. Tuck Matthew. Now, with the permission of all the participant friends, we will conclude today's webinar. Thank you all for attending this knowledge sharing webinar. Wishing all friends a healthy and peaceful life forward. Thank you, everybody, and bye bye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, sir.
much. Good night. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you,
Thank,
Mr.
thank,
Matthew.
Thank you.
thank you, everybody.